My husband and I were desperate to buy a house. We had been searching for one to our liking for months, but to no avail. I was always on the website Zillow to search for houses on sale. One day, as I was searching through it, I came upon a newly posted house which was within our price range, and I instantly fell in love with it. I was even more excited after going through the details. When my husband came home from work, I jumped up and just couldn't wait to show him the new house. He came, took a look, and was also instantly impressed by it. We called our realtor right away to ask him to show us the house. He said he could show it to us right then if we wanted, so we jumped at the chance and asked him to meet us at the house. After going through the house, we loved it so much that we asked the realtor to make an offer. We then asked him if he knew any history about the house. So he said he'd go home to check it out and would call us tomorrow. The next day, he called us and told us that there was a murder in the house. It gave me a pause, and I went blank for a second. I really liked the house, but a murder inside it is not something to be taken lightly. In the end, my husband and I decided to buy it. We moved in and everything was normal for about a week or so. After that, something strange happened. One night, I woke up and went to the bathroom when I heard a sound coming from the kitchen. I listened more carefully, and it sounded like someone was cooking something. My husband was in bed, so I knew it was not him. I thought maybe it was a rat or something, but I decided to go check just in case. When I reached the kitchen, the noises suddenly stopped. I turned on the light but saw nothing. I turned off the light and went back to bed, but when I reached the bedroom, I suddenly heard the noises again. I started to think about the murder in the house, and it started to freak me out. I just ran inside. The next day, I told my husband all about it. He didn't know what to make of it. Nothing else happened for a couple of months, so I kind of slowly forgot all about it. Then one weekend, I was home alone while my husband went to hang out with a cousin. I was using the bathroom when there was a loud knock on the door. I jumped from the noise, and then I heard my husband's voice from the other side, telling me to hurry up so he could also come in. I gave a sigh of relief, but it was weird, because my husband said he wouldn't be home until way later. I shouted at him to ask him why he came home so early, but there was no answer from the other side. I quickly finished my business and went out, shouting that I was done and he could use the bathroom now. It was still quiet. I went around the house, but I still couldn't find him. I called his cell phone, and when he picked up, I could hear music in the background. I suddenly had a bad feeling about all this. I asked him where he was, and he told me he was still with our cousin. My heart started to beat very fast when I heard that, so I told him to wait. I slowly went to the front door, and when I opened it, I heard my husband's voice from the bedroom, asking where I was. I just slammed the door shut and ran out of there. I ran to my car, and when I was about to open the door, I saw my husband in the car, except when he turned to look at me. Half of his face was missing, and his tongue was hanging out, almost falling, since there was only half a jaw to hold it. I gave my loudest scream and just ran away to a bus stop to tell my husband, who was still on the phone, what was going on. About 10 or so minutes later, my husband and a couple of our cousins came in 3 cars to where I was. While I was in the car with my husband, a couple of our cousins went inside the house holding some peach branches and started to sweep the whole house. They stayed inside for a while, and when they came out, they said everything should be all right for now. My husband and I sold the house a year later. My wife and I rented a house in Sacramento, and it was a 4-bedroom house with a big backyard. We had no idea why the rent for a big house was so cheap for its size, so we thought we were very lucky to stay in it. We were very excited the day we moved in. We told ourselves that we would stay in the house for as long as we could, or until the day we finally decided to buy a house. The next day, after moving in, we decided to invite a lot of our friends over. Later that night, a friend came to me and told me that he thought he saw a little kid running around in the backyard. It was weird because there shouldn't be any kids out there or even in the house, as no one brought their kids here. We just chucked it up to my friends just seeing things. A week later, I came home early. Since my wife was still at work, I decided to pop open a Bud Light and watch TV for a bit. I put my beer bottle on the table next to me, and when I went to grab it again, it was gone. I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find it. I just sat back down to watch TV. When I noticed that I'd been watching for about an hour now, I decided to get up, but before I did, I heard something rolling in the kitchen. I looked at the doorway connecting the living room to the kitchen, and I saw a beer bottle rolling by. I froze. I didn't know what kind of reaction I should have, so I just froze and looked at the kitchen. A few seconds later, I heard rolling again, and the beer bottle came rolling through the doorway again. This time, I was scared because I knew something was not right. When the beer bottle went out of view and stopped moving, I perked my ears up and listened very carefully. Then I heard it. There was a movement of what looked like someone dragging their body across the kitchen, coming to the doorway. When I heard that, I just turned around and bolted through the back door connecting to the living room. I didn't want to stick around to see what it was. I went to the street and waited for my wife. When she got home, I told her everything. At first she was also scared, but then she saw that my shirt was wet and smelled like something. She took a sniff and it was the smell of Bud Light. I looked at my shirt too, and my shirt was wet. I didn't know where it came from, but my wife looked at me and rolled her eyes, saying maybe I just drank too much. I told her I didn't, but she just told me to go back to the house. I was really reluctant to do so, but nothing else happened. Nothing happened after that for about a month, but then one day I came home early again. When I got home and went inside, I suddenly had a feeling that this situation was somehow similar to what I had experienced back then. But I didn't want to show my fear since I was supposed to be the man of the house. I went to the living room and sat down on the sofa again. This time, though, I didn't bring out a beer. I just sat there and watched the TV. I thought it was going to be all right this time, but then I heard a thud, like something just fell out of the bed. I went into full alert mode and slowly got up, trying to see if maybe I was mistaken or not. I then heard a thud again, but this time, closer, like someone had just fallen in the hallway near the living room. My heart was racing fast at this moment, but I was stuck in a dilemma. I really wanted to get out, but I wanted to get to the bottom of this since sometimes my wife will be alone in the house too, and I didn't want it to happen to her. I slowly moved my head out to look at the hallway, but to my relief, I didn't see anything. I turned back towards the kitchen, and there was a thud again. This time, to my horror, I realized that it was right behind me. I could actually hear deep breathing too, like someone was gasping for breath. Then I heard someone crawling towards me. I could hear the sound of the shirt as it was being dragged. My courage left me at that point, so I ran as fast as I could. When I got near the glass backyard door, I instinctively looked at the reflection, and I saw the reflection of a little boy on the ground, dragging his body, but his head looked like it was twisted backward. I have never run so fast. We confronted the landlord, and he told us that someone was murdered in it, and the people who knew about it didn't want to live in it. That's why the rent was so cheap. Needless to say, we moved out very soon after that too. It was one morning when I thought to myself that living in an apartment in Fresno wasn't going anywhere. So I decided to try and see if I qualified to purchase a house on my own for my family. Everything went smoothly. I was looking to buy a house that was in the countryside because I didn't want to see any neighbors. As I've lived in the city for a long time, it felt so crowded to see houses so close to each other. When my agent took me to see a house, I instantly fell in love with it. I was willing to make a huge offer on the house. The house was surrounded by acres of land. As I was roaming around the house, I noticed a cross near an orchid tree, but I didn't ask. When we were coming home from looking at the house, I told my agent that I was willing to pay as much as I could to get the house. A few weeks went by, and then I received news that I had got the house. I was super excited and couldn't wait to move in. Moving in was quick as I was looking forward to enjoying the house with a huge yard. A couple of nights later, I had some weird dreams, like someone in my dream was telling me to look after their house and take care of it with care. I woke up and didn't think of anything, but strange things were starting to happen to my husband and my kids too. My husband was out in the yard and someone was calling his name, but my kids and I were in the house. I didn't believe my husband until my kids were outside playing at the playground we had set up, and my son was playing and laughing, but he kept laughing. It seemed like he was chatting with someone and it was not going well because they were like fighting over something. And my son ran to me and said, "Mommy, I don't like my new friend." I looked up and was like, "What do you mean?" "No one was here but your sister." But my son kept saying, "No, Mommy. It's my new friend I just met when we moved here." I looked at my son and I knew something wasn't right. I took my kids and ran inside. I called my husband and told him everything. He said we need to check if anything happened in this house because it was normal at first. All these things happened in not even a week. That night, I called my agent and asked if he could look at the history of the house, but nothing seemed to come up. I took a nap after the call, and the same person from my dream came back and told me not to be scared. The person told me that their family used to live here, but they didn't make it because they were robbed and the robbers took everything they had and killed everyone here. They also said they were not going to leave our house behind until they found those people who killed them. I woke up scared and woke my husband up. I told him we shouldn't be living here and he was scared for himself, but in the end, we came to the conclusion that we had spent so much on this house that we were going to live in it for a bit longer. My friend bought a house. About a month later, he invited a lot of people to go hang out and drink. About 6 hours later, at 11 p.m., we were ready to call it a night. Everyone left one by one, until only I was left with him and his wife. I was so drunk that my friend told me to sleep on the couch that night. I took his offer, so my friend took out a blanket for me and then he and his wife went to sleep. The AC was on too, so it was comfortable. I had a weird dream that night. I dreamt I was walking through the forest and came upon a tree with a doll hanging by its neck on it. Upon looking closer, the doll had one eye missing. Then I heard some ruffling in the forest, like someone was stepping on a branch. When I turned to check it out, the doll suddenly came to life and grabbed my neck. It started squeezing hard, and I found myself unable to breathe. I was trying my hardest to grab onto the doll to make it stop. I somehow grabbed onto its head and then, with a hard tug, I ripped out the head. It stopped and I suddenly woke up after that. I was very relieved to know that it was just a dream. I checked the time, and it was only 3 a.m., so I was about to go back to sleep when I started to smell something horrible. It smelled like a decayed body. It smelled so awful, but I didn't want to get out to investigate, as it was in the middle of the night and I was very superstitious. So I didn't want to see a ghost if there was one. I pulled the cover over my head and just tried my hardest not to move. After what seemed like hours when nothing else happened, I just dozed off, and when I opened my eyes again, it was already morning. My friend was still sleeping, so I just ran out of there. Later that day, I told him what happened. He was also confused too, as nothing like that had happened to him or his wife. About a month later, we drank at his house again, but this time I made sure to bring a designated driver as I did not want to stay at his house overnight. About an hour in, I had to go pee, so I went to the bathroom and opened it, but then I saw a woman standing facing the wall opposite me. Since there were no girls here that night, I assumed it was my friend's wife, so I apologized to her, saying the door was not locked, so I closed it back and waited until she was done. As I waited, I heard my friend's wife's voice, except it came from outside, where all the guys were. I was confused and did not know what to think of that. As I was in my confused state, one of my friends came in and rushed into the bathroom to do number 2. When he opened the door, I peeked in, but there was no one there. I started having goosebumps, and I just ran out to join the guys. I didn't know if I should tell my friend or just leave it at that. As I was debating, I noticed the curtain to my friend's bedroom started opening slowly. And then, to my horror, a head slowly started to pop in and looked straight at me. I noticed an eye was missing, and it suddenly reminded me of the dream I had months ago. I stopped what I was doing and just did a very unmanly yell, getting all the attention of my friends. I pointed to the window and told them what happened. Everyone started to freak out, and after a few minutes of talking, we decided to switch houses with another friend. Later that night, when the party was over, my friend and his wife asked me if they could sleep at my place for the night. The next day, my friend and his wife decided to go back to their house. They called me later the next day, saying nothing was wrong with it and they didn't see anything. Even to this day, they still didn't see anything. I don't know why I was the only one to see it, but I never went to their house again after that day.